I'm Dr. Ann Peled. I'm a breast and plastic surgeon in San Francisco, and I'm excited to be with colleagues today talking about the value of male allyship for women surgeons. I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. Dr. Chen.
I'm Wendy Chen. I'm an assistant professor at an academic practice doing hand surgery and plastic surgery in Houston.
I'm Thomas Imahiyerobo. I am an academic plastic surgeon in New York with a practice that focuses on cleft and craniofacial reconstruction.
I'm Robert Grant. I was a plastic surgery residency program director for 22 years. Currently, I'm the clinical dean of a medical school.
Obviously, as we evolve our culture, male allyship is really important to the process of women surgeons and leadership in plastic surgery. So I'm curious for both of you, what were your sort of aha moments where you kind of transitioned to becoming a more active sponsor and ally to women surgeons?
I think as someone who grew up in a household with 4 sisters, all of whom are high achieving and have always been high achieving, male allyship really came quite natural to me. I mean, I'm really used to seeing sort of, women out there kicking butt and actually, quite frankly, raising the bar and holding the flag. So I found it very natural to look to my female colleagues, both for advice and for support. And then as my career continued, for partnership and allyship. It makes sense to lean in and build partnerships and work more closely with my female colleagues and sort of helping to make all of our goals come true.
Okay, and how about you, Dr. Grant?
So 2 things come to mind. The first was my experience when all of my residents were women. And I saw a number of things that happened to them in their relationships and interactions with their colleagues and peers, which I had never seen or experienced as a man going through that same journey. The second example was when I was actually trying to recruit female faculty to my division. And I realized I had to start to think about a whole lot of things from a woman's perspective that I never had to think about when I was trying to recruit a male plastic surgeon to the division. Women still have the biologic challenge of having to be the person who gives birth to the child and still have the expectations of doing most of the child care, or at least running the affairs of the home. So those are just 2 examples of why I realized I needed to educate myself and my male peers on how important it is to understand these particular challenges that women face as plastic surgeons, as physicians, as parents, and as doctors.
Where did you find out that information in terms of thinking about someone else in your position in trying to recruit women going forward?
I think the wonderful thing about this kind of conversation we're having today is that it takes place in the context of understanding that any organization is better with diverse components. I did some time and took a management degree, and one of the courses that had the most impact on me was the understanding that in building a team, you need to have different players and different components to let that team succeed.
Are there any tools that you would suggest to help young female trainees kind of cope with the process of these constant microaggressions?
Microaggressions we know exist, sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional, but they can be sort of hurtful nonetheless. I think other strategies that I would encourage women to do when confronted with microaggressions is to actually reach out to a male colleague that you trust, both for some advice on how to directly confront the situation, but also potentially as an intermediary to speak to another male colleague about what we can term as bad male behavior. And I think that that's another part of allyship, right? Being willing to step up and say, I'm going to advocate for my female colleague's behalf from her perspective. This is how this came across. Maybe we need to just talk about how we're going to be better communicators in the future.
I like to make the assumption for most people that it's when these things happen, whether it's microaggressions or not including people, it's often not intentional, right? That it really is something that people just don't know. They just haven't been educated on it. And I think going into those kind of conversations with that assumption on my end, it really helps if the men that we're having these conversations with don't get defensive and stay open-minded. And again, assuming that we're not coming at it from an attacking standpoint, that this really is meant to be an open conversation so that everything gets better for everyone, right? And that these relationships get better and people feel safer. So that would be the first thing I really think is important. So, family planning and maternity leave is certainly something that's really challenging for all of us in surgery. Surgery is demanding, pregnancy, family planning is demanding as well. And there's a general perception that men aren't going to handle this as well. They haven't walked in those shoes. But it's a big issue and continues to be as we have more women who are training in plastic surgery. So, just wondering, as being a program director, what your experience has been like and other thoughts either of you have on how we can do this better going forward.
The way that I've addressed that has really been in the institutional support that I've generated, not just within the plastic surgery residency program, but within our sponsoring hospital. They need to understand that women will need to be supported during their childbearing years in different ways than the men residents did. Having said that, the men benefit from this as well, because now with paternal leave, in addition to maternity leave, the dad can be there as well for those important aspects of his relationship life that male surgeons used to just give up on because they never thought they could. One of my proudest accomplishments as a program director was I had two of my residents, 2 different years, give birth 6 hours apart. And we celebrated that. It was fantastic. The team pitched in. Both of the residents finished their program on time without having to. Fortunately, there were no issues with the pregnancy, and their children are absolutely phenomenal. This was a challenge that we could take on and celebrate. That's the kind of approach that we need, to embrace the whole family planning, childbearing issues and understand that's who we are. We're people first.
I was just going to echo the institutional support being so incredibly important because it can't just be reliant on one person. I saw a friend from residency, and both of us had children during residency, and I went back after 3 weeks after a C-section with twins because I had to go back because that was what I was told I needed to do for my program director. But if you don't have the support, it's really hard to advocate, especially as a resident. So I love so much your story of getting the whole institution and the whole society and all the program directors on board. So we've been talking about how family planning affects women in residency, but we know it actually affects all people as part of training. And I'd love to hear, Thomas, your thoughts about what that was like for you and how you support other colleagues going through a similar situation.
A little known secret or well known secret about me is that I'm actually a father of 5 little children. And we started growing our family during my residency. And so, of course, this is an endeavor that I couldn't do without the support of my wife at home. But at the same time, I really relied on the support of my academic environment and my academic colleagues. And so I think it's important that we break down this construct that family planning is a one-way street, right? That this is something that is for women and that women are only doing, when in reality, it affects all of us. And anyone that has a family and is trying to balance that with their practice knows that this is a really important topic.
What advice do you have about how they could maybe see something, do something, say something?
There are times when it may feel uncomfortable to say, hey, I'm going to speak up for a female colleague. My advice to other men is that this is really critically important, that our female colleagues have so much to offer in their excellence, but also in their presence with what we do as plastic surgeons. We're all used to thinking in terms of risk benefits, and you may feel that you have put some things at risk by being an ally, but the benefits greatly outweigh the risk. And I think that's important for males to hear other males say. And then number 2, get involved, right? Like if your female colleague has a great idea, second it and be willing to say, hey, not only am I gonna lend support, theoretically, but I'm actually going to work with you, partner with you. Let's do this together.
But I'm curious to hear from a perspective of male mentors and sponsors to young female trainees. What are some advice that you give women as they start their journey in their training?
I think that if there was advice that I could offer, our young female trainees at the outset is to pace yourself. I think sometimes we come in and we are like, okay, I'm a plastic surgeon and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it all and I'm going to do it all very well and I'm going to make sure everyone knows that I'm doing it all very well. And I think that those are all very noble goals. But I think you also have to, for your own self and for your own, sort of emotional health, recognize that it's okay to not be doing it all the time. and that over the course of your career, you're going to have an opportunity to step forward and achieve each one of your goals.
How about you, Dr. Grant?
That's a great question, and it really goes to the point that we've selected you to be part of our team, and that every team member plays a really important role. And I can't read your mind. I need you to speak up and communicate. As a surgeon, we get very good at managing acute problems and take care of those sorts of situations when they're confronted right in front of us. But why I'm part of this conversation today is the challenges we're describing are things which are in the background, which we may not appreciate because we're so focused on the particular challenge surgically at hand. Surgeons need coaches. If we're going to succeed, whether it's in our profession or whether it's in our practice or our personal lives, that's why coaches exist. You may not just have one coach. There may be different people who coach you in different ways at different stages of your journey. But you're going to find in our department, people are very receptive to collaboration, to partnering with you, because your success is their success, and then it becomes our success.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that I hadn't thought of. Like, I think as women, we sometimes just think, oh, I'll just keep going and I'll keep working hard and I'll keep doing. And to ask for help and to ask for an active coach and to solicit that directly can sometimes, it's almost like managing up a little bit if your mentor sponsor doesn't know to do that.
So we've been talking about male allyship, and of course these are relationships that are bi-directional. And so I think it would be important for us to hear what advice would the two of you have for your male colleagues on how to be strong and effective male allies?
I think that there's some spaces that we just can't access. And so for those spaces, for men who are allies to speak up more or have more conversations to kind of evolve some of the people who aren't quite, let's say, activated yet to allyship.
The idea of actively looking for opportunities to bring women up. And it really does take active work on many times. You know, it takes thinking about what should a panel look like. It takes thinking about, is there an opportunity to give someone something that, you know, you would have given maybe to a male colleague, but you're going to give to a female colleague. And so I think taking the step to actively consider those issues is incredibly important.
All right, so to wrap up, what is everyone most excited about as we look towards the future of having more women plastic surgeons and leaders that are women in plastic surgery?
I think that now is a great time where doors which were previously closed maybe are now a little bit more open. I think the fact that we're having this panel and having this conversation is evidence to the fact that these are important issues that people are finally taking the time to recognize and speak about. This is the time to say, hey, I'm here and I'm a leader, and to really have the expectation that those ambitions are going to be met with support and with an open mind, as opposed to sort of with a sort of more closed mind or defensive posture. And I think for them to know that there are allies out there to be had and people who will have their back.
How about you, Dr. Grant?
I love plastic surgery. I love our specialty. And what I particularly love about it is the fact that my clinical practice was very different at the end of my clinical career than what it was at the beginning, due to all the advances in innovation that we see as plastic surgeons. And since so many of our advances have to do with concepts of aesthetics and beauty, both in the reconstructive realm and in the cosmetic world, I think it's no coincidence that the advances that we've seen over the past decade or so are due to the fact that we have more women in our specialty.
Dr. Peled?
Yeah, I may love hearing so much excitement. I think certainly have similar enthusiasm. A lot of it is our female trainees are going to see people who look like them and are going to see people that they can want to grow up and be.
And then on the other end of things, I think it's very exciting to see, even for me, as a junior faculty, visibility of women nationally or at the table and discussing things, because what that accumulates into is a sense of belonging, and that you belong here and you deserve to be here, and of course you should be here.
And then the other exciting part is hearing great voices like the two of you who really want to be sponsoring women, taking the time to give them opportunities, maybe instead of opportunities that they would get themselves, to make sure that we're advancing everyone together.